recording. And I'm going to share the presentation. So hopefully everybody can see that. There's just people to let in still. Okay, so it's the keeping people safe in the voluntary and community sector. And just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping. If anybody can't see it moving on, please let me know, because I can't see everybody. So just shout out or tell me there's a problem. I've done presentations before when I've got happily away into the 6th slide and everybody tells me they're still stuck on the first one. So I'll have a little bit of housekeeping if that's okay. There's just people coming in still. So thank you for attending. We're going to we start, as I say, it's been recorded. It's going to be on our Keeping People Safe section of URVAS website. Because we're going to record it, obviously, and because of the nature of what we're going to be talking about, if we could keep cases anonymous, please, and just remember confidentiality, keep it in the Zoom room at all times. If there are any concerns that we have about anything that's discussed or brought up, we will do something about it. Maybe we want to talk to you afterwards, so just be aware of that, because obviously we have got professionals here from a range of different services, and our main aim and priority at all times is to keep people safe. So, if you want to have a chat with us about anything that concerns you, then you'll have a number of different contact emails that will come up along with people's job titles and organisations, so you can get in touch with us afterwards. You can email me afterwards. I will put my email in the chat, and I'll put our office number as well. So if you want to discuss a specific issue, but as I say, every presentation is actually going to be talking to you about how to report things anyway. So those are the processes that we would recommend. So we will send out a copy of the slides to anybody who wants afterwards. Please use the chat function, or if you want to raise a hand to ask any questions, please do so. We will have after every presentation, there will be some opportunity for questions and answers. So, you know, I think if we were to do it ongoing through each presentation, it just might overrun time. So that's why we're doing it that way. Also, although the presenters who are going to be speaking tonight are from East Riding and the different services, and I'm aware that some of the attendees may be from North Yorkshire area or from York, a lot of the processes and things we discuss will be very similar to your own local authority. So what we would advise would be to familiarise yourself with your local safeguarding boards for adults or safeguarding children partnerships. Find out what there is in your area that will look at things like prevent, which we'll be talking about later, or wider community safety, or things to do with preventing domestic abuse and supporting victims, survivors and families around domestic abuse, and wider safeguarding. So all the numbers and the contact details you'll have to be from tonight will be for East Riding, but you will have similar in your own local authority. And if you're not sure, please feel free to get in touch with me and I will find out for you. We'll email you a short questionnaire after this session and appreciate your feedback if you've got the time to do that. So without any further ado, I'm going to move on to the first presentation. And if you want to have a look at the running order of tonight's sessions, have a look in the chat. And I'm going to introduce Jo Gomerson, who is going to talk us through the first slide. Is that okay, Jo?
Yes, thank you very much, Dirty. Yeah, my name's Jo Gomerson and I'm the Strategic Lead for the Safeguarding and Partnership Hub. And we also have Debbie Wells, who's one of our social workers in the Safeguarding Hub, and Charlotte Hedwigton, who is our Strategic Lead for Early Help and Prevention. Detty, before I start, I just wanted to say thank you for the invitation. We're really pleased to be here this evening, and I think it's a really great opportunity for us to share how members of the community and the voluntary sector, families can contact the Safeguarding Hub and the Early Help Hub. So we have a short presentation, but most importantly, there is a link to the Safeguarding Children's Partnership, which goes through this information in much more detail.
Brilliant, thank you.
So moving on to the next slide. So when we talk about the Safeguarding and Partnership hub and the early help hub, what we're talking about is the children's front door into services for children and young people who live in the East Riding. And what we know is that in terms of promoting children and young people's outcomes, that if we are involved earlier, then in terms of that better outcomes for children. So how the arrangements work in East Riding is we have our safeguarding hub, and I'm the lead for the safeguarding hub, and Charlotte is the lead for the early help hub and the prevention service. But what underpins these two hubs are our work with our families and with our partners. There is that saying, safeguarding is everybody's business. You know, we all have an interest in and we want to make good decisions about children, and it's about ensuring that for our children that they are receiving the right service at the right time. And for some children, that service may be universal in terms of that they're already linked into universal service. And for those children where they've got significant needs of a complex nature, it may be at that specialist level, which is children's safeguarding. So if we can just move on to the next slide, Detty, please. So what underpins right service at the right time is our effective support guidance. So this is a comprehensive piece of guidance, but there is also a quick report to read as well, which goes through, if we have got a concern around a child, what do we need to do about it? What can we collectively do about it? And we have our windscreen moving from universal, additional, intensive to specialist. So as an example, for some children, they may be well connected to universal services, but for some children, there may be a member of the community, member of the voluntary sector, another partner agency, a family member who's worried about a child and is not quite sure what they need to do. The effective support guidance can assist in that way. I would recommend people take the time to have a look at the Safeguarding Children's Partnership, and I know we've got Margaret Wood on the call, who is the partnership manager. But the philosophy behind the effective support guidance is the right service at the right time. And now I'm going to hand over to Debbie Wells, who's the advanced social worker in the Safeguarding Hub, who will talk you through what would happen if you were worried about a child and felt that you needed to speak to a social worker.
Hi everyone, as Joe's just introduced me, I'm Debbie Wells. I'm one of the social workers, advanced social workers in the Safeguarding Hub. So the telephone number is obviously at the top of this page, which is the number where you would ring, and it gives you certain options of what you might want to ask for. So one of the main ones being if you have an immediate child protection concern. Now, if you feel that a child is at immediate risk of harm, we would ask that you would contact the police in that matter if you see something or you know something that's happening. However, what we do offer is for any other professionals that can ring in and feel that a statutory response is needed by a social worker or an intervention. So what we also offer alongside that is our consultation service, where you may not know whether it reaches, which level it reaches. So when you go back to the effective support guidance and you see the windscreen of those different areas, sometimes you may not know whether it meets early help, child in need, which is your specialist support for safeguarding child protection. So we have a consultation offer as part of the Safeguarding Hub, where an advanced social worker will take some information, and that's done anonymously, to help guide through a mutual conversation what the worries are and where you feel it may sit. So it's always a good idea to have a little look at that effective support guidance before making a call, to get an idea of where you think it is. If you have consent from a parent because you are an older child, anybody, a caregiver, where you feel that there are some worries that on the effective support guidance you feel it meets the specialist and intensive, then you would complete your request for service on behalf or with the family to make, basically that's what you're requesting. So and the request for service can always be sent to you by an email from one of our team, or that is also available on the Thriving Safeguarding Children's Partnership. Can I have the next slide, Betty, please? So in the Safeguarding Hub then, so this is what we offer, social work service. So we open our lines from telephone lines and emails are open from 8:30 till 5 o'clock Monday to Thursday, and 8:30 till 4:30 on a Friday. And there are a team of 6 advanced social workers in this team, administrators, and also who sit within the Safeguarding and Partnership Hub are our key partners. So we have a representative from the police, we have a lead nurse as part of health, safeguarding in education officers, and we have our Making a Change survey team, which is when there's risks of exploitation and child exploitation and missing episodes. So what we do from the information that we receive, we can liaise with our partners to be able to get some additional information to inform our decision. So we, as a team, we respond to the phone calls and written requests. So that might be an email from a member of public, it might be telephone calls or letters or an email. And they can be from members of public, families wanting to seek support, and professionals. And what we have to do as part of following the request for service, so we have statutory guidelines where we have to make a decision for the child and family within 24 hours on the information we have. So for us to be able to make the right decision at the right time, we have to have the better the information we receive. So some good quality information, which would include telephone numbers, parents' names, child's names, addresses, the concerns and things that you may have already tried, any other agencies that you know that are working with the child or family, and any sort of factual information that you may know around those concerns or dates, etc. So we use that information that you provide us to communicate with our partners to be able to provide a decision based on the level of need that we identify from our effective support guidance. The big sort of area is around consent. So you may be thinking, if I'm going to be completing a request for service, what if I haven't met that parent? What if I don't have a contact number for that parent? And so what we would ask that you do is be sort of creative in, so if a child, say for example, is in a school or comes to a youth club setting, or there would be some way of being able to speak to the child to find out who's collecting the child, if the child's got a telephone number in their mobile phone for their mum or dad or caregiver, because consent, we need consent for a request for service to be able to share that information and so that parents are fully informed about your worries, why you're sharing those worries, and the sharing of information. And that's working together. And as Jo said right at the beginning, it's everybody's responsibility. So there may be times when you feel that it may place the child at more risk if you do gain consent. And if that is a concern, then you by all means ring the number and we can have a conversation about that. And we have to make a decision whether there's enough information around the risk and impact to be able to dispense that consent. We also have, so outside those working hours of 8:30 to 5, 4:30 on a Friday, then the children's emergency duty team pick up from where we leave off, really. So their hours are 5 right through till 8:30, and from 4:30 on a Friday and all day weekends and bank holidays. I also work in the emergency duty team and as a sessional worker, so I sort of understand more around. So the emergency duty team is exactly that, responding to emergency situations that you feel may not wait until the next working day. So they have to, the workers in there, they receive calls and they share it with the social worker, who has to make a decision of what needs to happen. So if there's a significant worry, we will have a look at it as an advanced social worker and make a decision how emergency duty team will respond on that worry, or whether it can wait until the following day, or whether you need to liaise with the police or any other agencies to be able to assist in some support. And then I think we move on to the early help section. So Charlotte, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you, Debbie. So good evening, everyone. I'm Charlotte Hedwigton and I'm the strategic lead for early help and prevention. So the work that we offer is at the opposite end of the spectrum to that Debbie's just been describing about that critical urgent support. We deal with the non-urgent concerns and we provide whole family support. So rather than just working with the child that's concerned, we try to work with the whole family to strengthen that family unit. The way you access our service can be through a phone call or a request for service, or by doing an early help assessment. You can pop on the next slide, please. I'll try and keep it brief because I'm aware we're pressed for time today. One of the key things about early help is we're a non-statutory service. So the work that we do, unlike if there is a child protection concern where the work will be done, we are very much working by consent and working with the family. If you have a concern, then we will have a conversation with you about it, but we cannot take any referrals without consent from someone with parental responsibility. That might be mum, might be dad, might be a grandparent, whoever has got the PR for that child, we would need that to be able to work with them. So if you cast your mind back to the effective support guidance, that nice colourful half moon, we work within the green and yellow, the left-hand side. So this is the universal offer where we can signpost you to universal services that may be able to assist you with the concerns, or people having that extra bit of support. Because we're non-urgent, we take a little bit longer to make our decisions sometimes. So we have up to 48 hours, with a bit longer because we don't work weekends. But again, it's about making that right decision at the right time. So when we do get a referral through, it will be discussed by managers within the service to decide who is best placed to support that family. If the child of concern is a young child, it may be that support is delivered through our children's centres and partners working with those children's centres. Or it may be we work with our youth and family support service for those children of an older age. We also have our mental health and emotional wellbeing service, who work predominantly with the child where we've got concerns about their emotional wellbeing. But all of it is done by consent. And as I say, it's non-urgent, non-statutory. So we do require that consent. And if you are concerned about a child's wellbeing, if it is urgent, it's 999 or to the safeguarding hub. So that's early help in a nutshell. And that Margaret is our lead for the East Riding Safeguarding Children's Partnership. They have reams of information on their website, so I do encourage you to have a look at that, but particularly around that effective support guidance, as it will take you through a lot of the concerns and thoughts and queries you may be having right now. Thank you, Detty.
That's great. Thank you, Charlotte. Margaret, do you want to say a few words about Safeguarding Children Partnership and the website, which I will put in the link in the chat?
I would just like to build on what Joe and Charlotte have said about the window. That quick guide is available on our website. If you go onto the website, in the top right hand corner, there is a link that says report to concern. Just click on that and it will take you to the page where there's the guidance, the full guidance, but also the quick guide. And I think the quick guide for any voluntary group or service, print that off and have that to hand with your policies and procedures. So you've got to hand the numbers that you can ring. As Debbie said, you know, there's the daytime number and also the emergency duty number. That is on the quick guide document for easy reference. So please do have a look at that. Also on the website, we've got a number of pages that reflect different aspects of safeguarding, and perhaps things like child exploitation or neglect or hidden harm, those issues around parental issues, around substance issues or mental health issues that you may want more information on to inform your decisions around safeguarding. So please do also have a look at those pages. As a partnership, right across the partnership, we work with agencies to pull together a really good safeguarding learning and development offer. And one of the key core parts of that offer is our e-learning, and that is accessible by the voluntary sector organisations as well through our website. On that e-learning offer, we have some basic safeguarding awareness raising courses, but also courses on specific areas like emotional health and wellbeing for children, issues around self-harm, child exploitation, impact of domestic abuse on children and young people. But we also have the links to some specific home office courses, so that we all have a duty to report FGM and prevent and on the base abuse. So these courses, we have links to the courses that explain what those duties are and how we can support and protect children and young people. So please do have a look at those links on the website too. If you are having issues around deciding which courses are the ones that you and your staff within your organisations need to undertake, please look at the website. There is, on every page, there is the inbox address for our training inquiries. Please drop us a line and we'll respond to you and help you decide on which courses are best for you and your staff. We're here to help. Many thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much, Margaret. That's brilliant. And as Margaret said, please familiarise yourself with your for those groups in East Riding, those are the links to have a look at and familiarise yourself with the training, how to report concerns, and then, like Margaret says, there's a number of other interesting pages for parents and carers as well, and professionals and for young people. So have a good look at it. And for those organisations and groups that are here tonight that are not from East Riding, please have a look at your own local Safeguarding Children's Partnership. If you Google your area, Safeguarding Children Partnership, I'm sure you'll come up with a right website. But if you get stuck, send me an email, I'll find it for you. So we're going to move on. Thank you very, very much to all of those presenters. That was really, really useful and helpful. There's a number of links that I've put in the chat. And I'm now going to move on to the next slide and next presentation, which is Jane Hamill and Siobhan Bath, who are going to talk to you about how to manage allegations within your voluntary or community or faith sector setting. And it says LADO, and that stands for Local Area Designated Officers. So I'm going to hand over to Jane and Siobhan. If you'd like to start, I shall click your slides when you're ready. Okay.
Thank you, Detty. Yeah, that's really helpful. So just quick introduction. So just so you know which one's which. So I'm Jane Hamill. I am one of the ladders for East Riding. Siobhan?
Hi, I'm Siobhan Bath. I'm the other ladder for East Riding. I don't think my camera's on, but I don't know how to turn it on Zoom.
There should be like a little camera with a red arrow in it, like a red line through it at the bottom of your screen. So you should be able to just click that and click on, but don't worry too much.
I've got it. I've found it.
Yeah,
lovely.
Yeah.
Excellent. So good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. So yeah, this is a brief guide about it's the local authority designated officer role, commonly referred to as LADO. So we're going to explain to you how allegations of abuse are made against individuals who work with children and young people in any setting and how they are managed. So riding safeguarding partnership, under that everybody has a responsibility to safeguard children and take allegations of harm and abuse against children seriously. So when an allegation is made, any adult working or volunteering with children and young people at some point may be the subject of an allegation that they have harmed a child. So every local authority has a statutory responsibility to have a LADO who's responsible for coordinating the response to these concerns or any concern that an adult who works or volunteers with children may have caused them harm. So the 4 criteria that we have for making a referral to LADO is the following. So if you have any reason to believe that an adult working or volunteering with children has behaved in a way that has harmed a child or may have harmed a child, possibly committed a criminal offence against or related to a child, behaved towards a child or children in a way that indicates they may pose a risk of harm to children, or behaved in a way that indicates they may pose a risk of to children. So that's the 4th criteria. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about that. So the 4th criteria has only been in fairly recently, for around a year, I think. So the threshold for the 4th criteria looks like this. So it may be a physical, sexual or psychological, emotional by nature or by negligence or other non-physical acts, such as via social media. And these behaviours include harming or placing a child at risk of harm by the person's own behaviour, failure to take action to prevent harm by another person, failure to recognise or accept risk posed by another person via denial or minimisation, inciting harm by another person, and or failure to follow safeguarding guidance that might have put a child at risk of harm. Next slide, please. So other factors to consider under the 4th criteria. So we are discussing behaviour that is perhaps towards another adult, not necessarily a child. So if an adult is behaved in a way in his or her personal life that could put a child at risk of harm, in terms of, so we consider things like domestic violence, serious assaults against another adult, sexual harm, downloaded indecent images, things like that. So what we need to consider is whatever has happened in their personal life, could that transfer as a risk into their position either as a volunteer or within their employment. So we need to consider whether or not that person has exploited or abused their position of power to cause harm. We need to understand or recognise the need for clear personal boundaries. And if there's been any evidence of crossing those personal boundaries, we consider that within LADO. So an adult may become the subject of criminal proceedings, as I've just alluded to, relating to a child or adult, which may indicate risk to children. As I've suggested already, we consider things like violent assaults, domestic violence, sexual offences against adults. And again, we are considering that transferable risk into the employment or position as a volunteer. So has that adult become the subject of Section 47 inquiries under child protection procedures with children's social care and or the police? So if that investigation is around their own child, so again, we consider, is that person able to respond appropriately and safeguard children within their role? Thank you. So the process, we're going to talk you through the process in stages. So stage 1. So persons who have become aware of an allegation against a person working or providing services for children and young people should in the first instance discuss this with their designated safeguarding lead or the person within their organisation that is responsible for safeguarding concerns. If you don't have someone who's responsible within your organisation, then approach us or approach the local LADO. So the LADO, us, we need to be notified within 24 hours via the LADO referral form or telephone call or Teams call, whatever that may look like. But we do ask that if you've got an initial inquiry that you contact us through the LADO inbox, because then you are bound to get a response within 24 hours. If either Jane or I are off, we may not be available to respond to calls or emails. So we do ask that initial inquiry goes through the LADO inbox. The email address comes later. So as I've just said, we will respond within 24 hours to any initial inquiry. And if you've got any concerns around immediate harm to a child, in the first instance, you must make a referral to the Safeguarding Hub. Next stage. Thank you. So stage 2. So in all cases, the ladder and designated safeguarding lead will consider the following points. So whether or not threshold for ladder is met, and that's around that 4 criteria that I discussed initially. So the ladder will always offer advice around next steps, even if it doesn't meet our threshold for consideration. We will always signpost that person to where they need to be with their concerns. So the ladder will agree whether a referral to the police or children's social care is needed, and whether or not that initial multi-agency allegation meeting is required. So we'll also explore any immediate actions to make a child or young person safe. There will also be consideration around any potential conflict of interest. Stage 3. So the ladder will consult with the police, children's social care, and if necessary, the person's line manager, employer, trustee, or chairperson. So whoever sort of is in charge of that safeguarding, ladder will have those discussions with initially. Thank you. I think it's over to you now, Jane, because the slides aren't marked as in numbers, are they, like the same as ours?
It's all right, Siobhan. I think it was over to me about 4 slides ago.
I
couldn't get in
you
there.
were keeping quiet. I was like,
I'm being professional. So stage 4. The ladder will aim to convene a multi-agency allegation meeting within 5 working days of the referral where required. Our allegation meetings are not to be confused with children's social care strategy meetings, so that's why we've renamed them to make it clear that it would not be a children's social care strategy meeting. Ours is to look at the allegation and look at any kind of transferable risk within a workplace or volunteer role. The ladder does not directly investigate anything. So I think it's a bit of a misconception that people think you put referral into the ladder and the ladder investigates that concern, that allegation. We don't do the investigation. What we do is coordinate and manage the actions throughout the process. So making sure that all information is included, making sure everything's done in a timely manner, and more so making sure that the process is thorough and fair as well. Any investigation usually reflects potential activity by police, children's social care and the organisation. Any allegations should be discussed with a designated safeguarding person. And again, if you're unsure who the designated safeguarding person is for your organisation, do come and speak to myself or Siobhan about that, and we can guide and assist you with next steps of who to talk to. Any allegation must not be disclosed to the person in question until there's been a discussion with ladder. So, for example, if it is one of your colleagues or one of the volunteers that works alongside you, and a child or an adult has made an allegation about them, what you mustn't do is go and inform that person that somebody has said something. Your first thing that you must do is obviously speak to the ladder. The reason for that being is not because the person in question won't find out, because they will do. It's to make sure that prior to them finding out, we've eliminated whether or not there needs to be some kind of police investigation. And with regards to that, if you just kind of think of the scenario, if somebody is alleged to have been using a digital device, a camera, phone, laptop, to be taking indecent images or downloading indecent images, then obviously we wouldn't want to alert an individual of an allegation, because those devices would need to be seized by the police. So that's one of the reasons and one of the bit of the rationale as to why we don't disclose that information until further discussions taken place with ourselves. And now it's back to you, Siobhan.
right, thank you. Okay, so next slide, please. Stage 6, we should be on now. Thank you. So the ladder outcome is determined on the balance of probability. So our threshold is very different from the police threshold. Theirs is beyond all reasonable doubt. Ours is on the balance of probability. So we weigh the evidence on sort of 51% as to whether or not an outcome could be substantiated. So we consider as much evidence as possible, and we gather as much evidence as possible to enable us to make a balanced, fair decision. So the outcome is agreed not just by us as the ladders, but it's agreed by all professionals involved within that process. So these are the outcomes that we consider. These are the outcomes that are given to us by the National Ladder guidance. So they are substantiated. There is enough identifiable evidence to prove the allegation. And again, that's on the balance of probability, that 51%. It could be false. There is enough evidence to disprove the allegation and suggest that the allegation was falsely made. It could be malicious. There is enough evidence to disprove the allegation. Therefore, there has been a deliberate act to deceive. It could be unsubstantiated. This is one of our most common outcomes. This is not the same as a false allegation. An unsubstantiated outcome is agreed when there is insufficient evidence to either prove or disprove an allegation. The term does not mean guilty or innocent. So in that situation, that's where a common situation is where it's one word against another person's, and there's only those two people in that room at that time. There's no other evidence, no CCTV evidence, no other witnesses. Therefore, it's one person's word against another. We can't say whether that did or did not happen. Therefore, we would come up with an unsubstantiated outcome. Unfounded. The allegation is determined not to be based on fact, and there is no substance to the allegation. That is what it says it is.
Okay, next slide, please. So the actions for the employer or organisation for yourselves. So the employer or organisation should seek advice from the ladder, police, human resources and children's social care where appropriate, especially in relation to disclosing the allegation to the person in question, as I discussed a minute ago. Following an allegation, the employer or organisation should ensure that all children are safe by implementing appropriate risk assessments and safety plans. So that could be from making sure they're safe from the minute you're being made aware about the allegation. You know, do children's social care need informing? Do we feel that that child is at risk of immediate harm? Do the police need informing? Is it out of hours? Do you need to contact them to make sure a child's safe? Also, when we're thinking about putting together appropriate risk assessments, it's about moving that forward. So we may have an allegation about an individual, but actually we need to look at whether or not it's proportionate for that individual to either be suspended from the role that they are doing while the allegation is being investigated, or whether or not we can put the risk assessment together to mitigate any risk. And again, that all depends on what the allegation is and the context behind that. But again, that's something that we will assist you with all the way through anyway. The important thing to remember is consent is not required at all. It's not required from the victim, and it's also not required from the person in question. So if you do receive information and the victim says, whatever happened, the allegation, whatever that would be, but then they said, but I don't want to do anything about it. Unfortunately, that allegation has already then been made, then we need to be looking at that allegation. Now, they don't have to contact the police, they don't have to go to the police if they don't want, and they don't have to report it officially to the police, but we still need to look at that allegation. So if it has met our threshold, then that is a discussion that we will be having with yourselves about putting that formally via a referral as well. Following the ladder meetings, feedback should be given to the child or victim and person in question who the allegation is in relation to where appropriate. So within our meetings, two of the things that we're responsible for as ladders, I think as Siobhan previously said, is the duty of care to those individuals and their well-being as well. So we will be, where appropriate, age appropriate if it is a child, and obviously appropriate for the person in question if there's no police investigation. We will be asking you to feed back to those individuals just so they know where we're at within the ladder process, because when it is appropriate to inform the person in question that they are subject to the ladder process, it's your responsibility to keep them updated throughout to make sure that they just don't think that things are happening without them knowing about it. And thinking about duty of care as well, the employer and organisation has got a duty to offer independent support and must ensure there's a point of contact for the individual. That's usually within the organisation. If you don't have any internal support to access for an individual, it is sometimes about signposting them to the right places. It could be GP, it could be some other voluntary organisation who could help with their emotional and mental well-being during a very difficult time, because it is a very difficult time for people. So our ladder responsibilities, I probably just touched on some of that. So the ladder is responsible for monitoring progress of referrals, to ensuring they are dealt with as quickly as possible and are consistent with a thorough and fair process. And we do pride ourselves on a thorough and fair process as well. Once sufficient information has been gathered to enable a balanced decision, the final multi-agency allegation meeting will be arranged to agree the outcome and conclude the allegation. Like Siobhan did allude to a while ago, it's not a ladder decision. It's every professional, every individual who's part to the ladder process to agree an outcome. It's not just our decision. The ladder will obviously then record information, actions, and ensure that employers or companies are aware of their legal duty to refer to the DBS or other regulatory bodies where required. There is a confidential ladder database where all records are saved. Only the ladders and ladder manager can access these records. So that means that basically just because you work in the East Riding doesn't mean you can access any information that we hold. It is extremely confidential and it is restricted as well. The minutes from any meeting must not be shared outside of the meeting, and definitely must not be shared with the persons in question either, unless there's been agreement with the ladder. If the person in question would like a copy of the minutes of any meetings that we hold, they can make a subject access request to the East Riding or whichever authority is dealing with it, and then a redacted copy would then be provided to them. Right, Siobhan.
Thank you. So key information then to remember. So all allegations in the first instance must be referred to ladder within 24 hours. All concerns around immediate harm to a child or children must be referred to children's social care. If an alleged victim does not wish to make a complaint, this must still be reported to ladder and investigated by the relevant agency. And so if an allegation is made, like Jane has said, and the victim does not want to press charges or take it any further, they disclose something, they say, but I don't want to share this, it still has to be shared and the ladder still needs to be informed. So allegations of historical abuse should also be responded to in the same way as current concerns. So if a child discloses something that happened at school 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it still needs to be reported, it still needs to be looked at. And the reason for that is because that person may still be working with children, and we need to ensure that that person is safe to work with children, and if not, implement relevant safeguards. So the term employer means the organisation that has had the working relationship with the person against whom the allegations are being made, and that includes voluntary organisations. Thank you. So that's the presentation. So thank you for having us. These are the contacts. This myself and Jane. You will see the ladder email address there on that slide in green. So as I've mentioned earlier, please, any initial inquiries, pop them through to the ladder inbox, and one of us will get back to you prompter. We are very good at getting back to you. So please, yeah, just drop us an email and we'll give you a call back to run anything past, or just have a little discussion, or send you the referral form as such. So thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Siobhan and Jane. And very well, Siobhan, you kind of came in just before you were on. So well done. So, I mean, with that's fantastic. A whole range of different presentations for those voluntary and community groups and partners that work with children and young people. So I think at this point, it would be useful to have a look at any questions that anybody might have. So if anybody has got any questions around the right service, the right time, reporting concerns, the Safeguarding Children's Partnership, early help, any of the information that Siobhan and Jane have just talked about in terms of allegations, then if you want to put it in the chat or just raise your hand. It might be better though if because I can only see a few. Let me see if I can see more people. So if anybody got their hand up, does anybody want to ask a question? or pop anything in the chat. And it may be, oh, Steve from Hull and East Yorkshire Smile Foundation. Steve, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, just something to be clarified, really, if possible. Towards the end of the presentation that you were just giving, you mentioned referring to DBS. Does this include when an allegation has not been substantiated? Do we need to report all allegations to DPS, whether they're founded or not?
That's a really good question, because the threshold for referring to the DBS is if you've got a substantiated outcome and that person then is removed from regulated activity, so either dismissed because of the allegation and the substantiated outcome or moved into another area, then that would mean that a referral would need to be made to the Disclosure and Barring Service. However, there are some occasions where you have to unsubstantiate an allegation because based on the balance of probability, we don't have enough evidence to substantiate it. But what we do have is a really long chronology of a pattern of bad behaviour, basically. Now, we can make that judgment call there and then that we do feel that even though we've had to unsubstantiate it, we've still got enough safeguarding concerns to make the referral for DBS then for them to make their decision. Because obviously, barring somebody on the DBS and not put them on the barred list is not our decision, that's for DBS to consider. So it's never just black and white. There is other factors that we do need to consider, but we would always discuss all the options with any referrer and anybody party to the ladder process as well. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's perfectly fine. That's cleared it for me. Thank you.
That's very, very helpful. Good question, Steve. I think there is a lot of uncertainty sometimes around then what happens, isn't there? So that was really good. So if there is something that occurs to you as we're going through the next presentation, please feel free to put it in the chat or to direct it towards the presenter, the speaker, and we will move on to the next presentation, which is Marie Chappell from the East Riding Safeguarding Adults Board, who is going to talk about how to recognise and to report around adult abuse. So this is very much around those voluntary and community group organisations that are working with adults over the age of 18. So over to you, Marie, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Detty. And thank you to Irvas and the wider group for the invite this evening, and to all participants for attending. So if you can move on to the slide, please, Detty. Thank you. As it's been said throughout this session so far by Jo, Debbie and others, safeguarding really is everybody's business. And whilst there are some principles which apply to organisations in a professional capacity, I think the thing that I wanted to mainly highlight this evening is the principles that are highlighted in red here, really, around safeguarding adults is everybody's business, and also doing nothing is not an option. So irrespective of whether you're in a professional capacity or otherwise, they're the two highlights really that I want people to go away with after this evening. But in terms of the actual professional principles, they're very much around the duty of care to individuals, duty of candour, and all professionals work to their own code of conduct. So they must do report concerns. If you're concerned that professionals might not be reporting concerns, then you also have that duty to do that under that principle of safeguarding everybody's business. If you could move on, please. Thank you. So what I want to go through this evening is just some key points, really, to know what safeguarding adults is, to recognise the different types of abuse, and more importantly, really, to know how to report it. So we'll understand what safeguarding is, what we've got in safeguarding adults is we've got a specific 10 types of abuse which are highlighted in a piece of legislation. So we do have a statutory duty around them 10 types of abuse, which I'm going to talk through in this session. And then to recognise who may abuse people and where that abuse might take place, and then be aware of the reporting pathways. What I'm not going to do is go through in any great detail on all of them 10 types. I want to highlight a particular 3 or 4, which I feel are most relevant to the voluntary community sector. But you can read the others. They'll be in the pack that you get sent in this after this session. And also, I want to just highlight at this point, and it'll be at the end. We have also got our own Safeguarding Adults Board website. The address will be put on at the end. It's in the end of this session. And there's an absolute wealth of information on that website, and also links to lots of other information for the voluntary and community sector and other support organisations. So if we could move on, please, Detty. And the website is on the bottom of every one of these slides, helpfully enough. So we need to protect an adult's right to live in safety, free from harm and abuse, and that's what we all need to do. We all have a responsibility to do that. And safeguarding is about people and organisations working together to prevent abuse. Now, I'm from the Safeguarding Adults Board. I'm not from the operational service, which was slightly different to what you got from the children's service in the earlier presentation. So the Safeguarding Adults Board is that multi-agency partnership of the organisations working together. We have 3 statutory partners, which are the NHS, the police and social services. But we've got a lot more non-statutory partners than there are statutory. And really our work is dependent on all them other organisations and fully inclusive, including of the community and voluntary sector. Even more so, we have to say, over the past couple of years, when communities have really pulled together and then voluntary sector services have really helped and supported people. So we have to have regards to the adults' views, wishes, feelings and beliefs. Slightly different to children's, in that a lot of adults may make decisions that are very different from your own. And so we have to recognise that. Some decisions that they decide, such as people choose, to some extent, may choose to self-neglect or to live as a hoarder. That's one example that springs to mind. You may not choose that lifestyle, but they might do. So we have to recognise that people are not all the same. We also have a responsibility to raise public awareness and provide information. So in that, such as things like this, we have this Safeguarding Week. We have lots of publicity. We've got different websites. We have in the past gone into service areas and spoken about adult safeguarding, and we'll be moving into more to do that sometime soon, hopefully. So if you could move on, Detty, thank you. In terms of our key legislation, so we are around the area of safeguarding adults is bound by legislation. We are a statutory body as the Safeguarding Adults Board. So whichever local authority area you live in, there will be a Safeguarding Adults Board. So we're bound by the Care Act. That's the most recent piece of guidance around safeguarding. In particular, 3 specific chapters around safeguarding, advocacy and wellbeing. And the reason why we have them 3 specific chapters in terms of advocacy is that most adults will be asked to provide consent. Previously, we've talked about consent of children. So most adults will be asked and may be able to provide consent for safeguarding. Where they can't, so where they might not have the capacity to provide that consent, then the local authority has a duty to find somebody who can speak on their behalf. So be it a family friend, a member of the family, or an advocate that's appointed to them. So we have some very specific duties under advocacy. The most recent procedures around safeguarding adults are on our website, and I'll just make reference to them now. So they include lots and lots of different areas of legislation, guidance, and the how to report, but they were updated in January 2022 and they're on the website. So if you could take a look at them at some point. Thank you, Detty, if you could move on. So that's what you must always follow, the multi-agency procedures, that's what they're called, multi-agency procedures for responding to adults at risk of harm and abuse. And there's always a role, I can't emphasise this too much, for people working as volunteers to report cases of concern to your manager first, because they'll have had the relevant training in terms of reporting, but to have that discussion with your manager so that it's out there in the open that you're worried and concerned about something and that you want something to happen. So if you could move on to the next slide. So this slide reiterates the importance of everybody working together. So it starts at the top with the law, the UK legislation, the Care Act. Going around the hexagon, the police obviously have the main duty to investigate crime. So at the point at which a safeguarding inquiry, what we call a report that comes in about safeguarding, where it's evident that there is a crime, the police are involved at that really early opportunity. The local authority has the ultimate duty. They are the key agency who have a responsibility to our residents. So they also have that responsibility. And then there's other agencies, many other agencies. So the CQC, the Care Quality Commission, monitor and regulate care homes and residential homes. And the reason why they're really key to adult safeguarding, in the East Riding, we have 140 residential care homes. And in there are many adults who would be classed as vulnerable adults. So the Care Quality Commission has a responsibility to monitor the care that the independent providers are providing, to make sure it's a good quality service, and that they have a responsibility also to work really closely with the local authority and to also report concerns where they see them in residential care settings. Sorry, can you just skip back a minute? So I mentioned care providers as well, and they highlighted the darker shades are you and us as the board. So the board again is the multi-agency partnership and the public and voluntary and community sector groups. If you can move on then please, Detty. So I mentioned previously the 10 types of abuse, and these are actually written in statute. So if you witness or if you hear about any of these must be reported. And it might not be that somebody's deliberately or intentionally undertaking any act of abuse, but if you are concerned about any of these, it's to report it, to have a discussion with your manager, and to ultimately report it if you're concerned. So what I'm going to do is there are 10 slides in this pack from now on, which goes through these 10 types in a little bit more detail. But I'll just focus on 3 or 4 at the moment. So if you can skip down to financial. There we go, thank you. So the reason why I want to focus on this is because you'll have people coming into your service. We've got various services here this evening, and there might be evidence that they've got plenty of money, they're buying lunch, they're buying products and services for themselves, talk about the stuff that they do, talk about going out, maybe going on holidays, and you just get to know the people that come into your service. You might see a sudden change in the demeanour or presence of somebody. And it may be that they're the subject of financial or material abuse. So it might be that in all intents and purposes, they may be offering money to children, grandchildren, and that becomes a bit of a pattern, but then they're leaving themselves short, really, of money. Or more seriously, they might actually be scammed from money. Obviously, people are targeted through scammers. Quite often, vulnerable elderly adults are the target, either on the phone, on the doorstep, through advertisements. And some elderly people who may be isolated or lonely will take up that. They'll take up that phone call. They'll send money somewhere. So and they might disclose that to you. So that's one of the examples that I wanted to just point out this evening. I've got their psychological, 2 down, I think it is, yeah. Psychological or emotional abuse. This is around controlling some behaviours of vulnerable adults, so they feel more vulnerable. That emotional abuse through the language that's used to them. They might be then frightened or reluctant. They might be reluctant to then come into the service again, feel a bit more withdrawn. And a lack of appetite, a lack of sleep, just a different person to what you've used to seeing. And you can have conversations with them without divulging or asking lots and lots of questions. You can just try and understand why the behaviour might be changing. And if you can just focus on self-neglect, skipping down, there we go, thank you. I mentioned that a bit earlier in the intro. Some adults choose to self-neglect. They might be caring for somebody else more than they're caring for themselves. Start to not look after their own personal hygiene. Some elderly people really love taking in cats and other people's cats. And that be something that, again, where they're maybe spending more money on the cats and the pets than they are on themselves. And then undertaking hoarding. There's this instance where we've seen people falling asleep while smoking, obviously causing smoke damage, fire damage. So self-neglect has become an issue. I'm not saying it's a massive issue in the East Riding. It's been a bigger issue in some other areas. So that's something that, again, that maybe you in your services may spot a little bit more of. But I'll let you read, again, there's 10 of these, there's lots on the website. And if you can skip down to the one with the red colour in it, that's it. So moving on now, we as a local authority and partners, we can't, unfortunately, protect everybody. So within that Care Act duty, we have a statutory duty to care for people who meet what we call the 3-stage test. Well, it's been rephrased, actually, the three statutory criteria. And so these are specifically, there's an adult with needs for care and support, so that might be health or social care. They're experiencing or they might be at risk of abuse or neglect, and they're unable to protect themselves from that abuse. So if them three elements are met, then they're the ones that need reporting to the local authority, and the local authority then has a duty to look into them cases. If you can move down to the next one, please. Thank you. So it's, yeah, thinking about now, where can this harm take place? Well, it can take place anywhere. I've already mentioned our 140 care homes. I'm not saying there'll be abuse and neglect in them. There may be. They're a place where there are lots of vulnerable adults, as are hospitals. But relatives and family may abuse their own relatives and family. Professionals, either paid or unpaid, take opportunities. We have reports of carers abusing vulnerable adults. And then it's quite a likely scenario is that vulnerable adults do actually abuse other vulnerable adults, and part of that is a pattern of their behaviour. It might be due to a dementia that they've got, and they're managed in care homes or in hospitals, but they're different people who could abuse. Neighbours, friends and associates, and then there's the people who go out deliberately, such as scammers. If you could move on now, please. So the main point here is just to challenge, to don't put your others at risk, don't put yourself or others at risk. Make sure that any known victims that you're aware of are safe. Have a discussion with your manager, and then I'll go on to talk about the actual reporting. If you can move down now, please. So the reporting pathway is that immediate danger is to phone the police. And then we have the place to go to is the ERSAB website, www.ersab.org.uk, and there's an online reporting tool there, an online form, which asks for all the details. Similar to what Debbie and Joe have talked through previously, we'd like as much information as possible because we need to act on that information. So as much info as possible, and you can also email or telephone. If you can move on to the next slide, please, that'll just give you that. Okay, so the operational safeguarding adults team, that's that top telephone number. We also have a consultation line, the bottom part of this slide here. Consultation line is for professionals and for volunteers, and that is a place to go to where you can telephone for that advice. If you're just unsure, you don't know what to do, and I will put that telephone number in the chat. I have got it, it's not on the slide. Then that is the consultation line. It's new. It was in a sort of a phased approach for the first month, and now it's been rolled out. So it's fully available for volunteers as well. So it's very similar to the children's consultation line. Just before I finish, I want to talk about the area of consent. Now, most adults will be able to give consent. Where they don't give consent, we would ask for, there are two areas where it can be overridden. One is where you believe that they are unable to give consent due to their frailty, drug and alcohol issues, but would want that information in the concerns form. And the other area is where you think other adults are at risk as well as themselves. So you can still put the concerns form in, and you can allude to that in the form and say you believe that other people may be at risk. And a good example of that is the care home scenario. You might visit somebody, you might be really, really concerned about somebody that you're seeing, and they say, I'm fine, I don't want it reporting. But there's another 40 people in there and you really are worried. So you can have that conversation in the consultation line. So I can conclude there. Lots of information on the website, also training on the website. Training for is equally available for volunteers. There's an e-learning. So thank you very much for listening.
That's great, Marie. Thank you so much. A lot of information, as you said, very comprehensive. And again, we would urge everybody in East Riding who works with adults to familiarise yourself with the Safeguarding Adults Board website, have a look at the training, have a look at all the other information on how to report concerns, and you know, just make sure that in your Safeguarding Adults policy, first of all, make sure you have one. I'll be talking a bit later on about the support that URVAS is able to provide to voluntary and community groups, and that you've got those numbers in there and you know what to do. So I'll say, has anybody got any questions for Marie about any of the things that she's presented upon in regard to adults? And there's some good comments coming in. Thank you very much, Jeff. I thought it was very, very useful. All the presentations so far, I've covered a lot of information. I will send the slides out to anybody who wants them. Just put your email in the chat, let me know. And as I said, it will be recorded, and well, it is being recorded, and it will be on the URVAS website for anybody to share with people or have another look at. So is there any questions for Marie? You can either put them in the chat or just raise your hand. So I can see if there's a question. And again, if you can't think of one now, but you have a little think and you want to chat with Marie directly, then please feel free to put that in the chat directly. So it doesn't look like there are any questions. So, and we have still got a few things. Oh, there is something in the chat. Let me just double check. Is there a model policy available to use? Yes. Part of the information I'll be talking about later is that URVAS, East Riding Voluntary Action Services, which is my organisation, provide a range of different policy templates for voluntary and community groups around safeguarding and other areas as well. So that includes safeguarding adults as well as safeguarding children, and we can help you to put that together. They're very comprehensive. They have all the numbers on there that are the most latest up to date. And we will be delivering some training later on in the year. We've got one of the colleagues has joined us tonight. They haven't even started yet. Two of my new colleagues, and they haven't even started, and they're here tonight. I think they've put in the chat who they are, and but they will be starting on the 6th of July, and we will be looking at putting a range of different training on around things such as, you know, how you safeguard adults or children in the voluntary and community sector. So that will complement the training that both Marie and Margaret have referred to in terms of the Safeguarding Adults Board and Safeguarding Children's Partnership, but it'll be very much bespoke for voluntary and community groups. So there'll be much more information about that later. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hand over to Matthew Templeton, who is here tonight from the Community Safety Partnership for East Riding. So Matthew, if you're there.
I am.
Great stuff, lovely. Over to you with your presentation on the CSP and Prevent specifically.
Yeah, thanks, Detty. Thanks for having me. I've come tonight off the back of a meeting I had with Detty last week, who invited me along. So it's nice to be, and I definitely learned a lot. Detty, can I just confirm you're on the slides? Oh, go up one, please, to the start. Thank you.
Yeah, I am. I'm in charge of the slides, if that's okay.
No, that's absolutely fine. I'll give you a prompt where needed.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Matthew Templeton. I'm the manager for the East Riding Community Safety Partnership. For those who aren't aware, the Community Safety Partnership is made up of the council, police, fire service, probation, the East Riding and Humber Integrated Care Board, as it's known now, and the voluntary sector. So the partnership works together to reduce the incidence of crime and disorder, tackle underlying causes, and achieve permanent improvement to the quality of life in our local communities. So one of the Community Safety Partnership's areas of work is Prevent, and part of my role is to support the coordination of the Prevent strategy in the East Riding of Yorkshire. So in this brief presentation, I intend to cover in the most basic sense, Prevent, what Prevent delivery looks like in the East Riding, and what delivery may look like moving forward. So I've developed this presentation with the voluntary community, social enterprise and faith sector in mind, and hope that moving forward, this is more opportunity for awareness raising of Prevent with the groups present. Next slide, please. So what is Prevent? So Prevent is part of the government's contest strategy, which is our overall counter-terrorism strategies made up of the 4 Ps, which is pursue, prevent, protect and prepare. The aim of contest is to reduce the risk to the UK and its interests overseas from terrorism, so that people can go about their lives freely and with confidence. This strategy not only aims to catch and prosecute terrorists, but also to prevent people becoming terrorists in the first place. So today we'll be talking exclusively about Prevent. So Prevent is all about working with partners to stop people becoming exploited or radicalised to all forms of terrorism. So this is done by challenging people and their views that promote extremist or dangerous behaviour, or that are shared by terrorist organisations, reducing their opportunities to use the internet to endanger or exploit others, and genuinely reduce support for terrorism of all kinds. So the 3 objectives of the Prevent strategy are to tackle the causes of radicalisation and respond to the ideological challenge of terrorism, safeguard and support those most at risk of radicalisation through early intervention, so identifying them and offering support, and to enable those who've already engaged in terrorism to disengage and rehabilitate. So to find out more about Prevent, I've included links to the East Riding Preventing Terrorism page, which is a lot more detail regarding the background and how partners work together to counter radicalisation. It also includes our referral mechanism. So next slide, please, Letty. Thank you. So what does Prevent look like in the East Riding? So initially, we must assess the risk in our locality. So annually we receive the counter-terrorism local profile from the counter-terrorism policing teams. The counter-terrorism local profile, or the CTLP, identifies the threat and vulnerability from terrorism and extremism in local areas. The CTLP helps the police and local partners understand and prioritise threat and vulnerability with suggested recommendations to address any risk. So we've recently been drafting a situational risk assessment for the East Riding, which utilises intel from both the CTLP and information from partners to support Prevent planning. So it's also our duty as an authority to have a Prevent action plan in place. So this is a smart plan that aims to mitigate against risk and threat, support those vulnerable to radicalisation, and develop the awareness of Prevent. We also have a governance structure. So in the East Riding, we have quarterly multi-agency Prevent boards made up of partners from the council, police, Ministry of Defence, health, education and the voluntary sector. The purpose of the Prevent board is to provide multi-agency forum to coordinate the implementation of Prevent activity through effective partnership working. So the contest strategy sits under the governance structure of the East Riding Community Safety Partnership. So currently I'm drafting an updating version of the community engagement strategy for the East Riding, which is in part why I'm here today and something I will come onto my coming slides. So let's have to look at training. So previously there was a wider face-to-face offer of Prevent training from the authority. There is a baseline introduction to Prevent offered by the Home Office, and I'll provide a link for this at the end and strongly recommend everyone complete this. We are currently looking at some approaches to Prevent training as a partnership, as given the rapidly evolving themes of radicalisation, we see more agencies requesting this type of training. We also look at problem solving and disruption processes. So while the police will focus on the pursue area of disruption, it requires a multi-agency approach to problem solve around supporting vulnerable people in communities in regards to all forms of safeguarding. So community tensions, for example, are important to monitor, and these can be regularly monitored via engaging with communities and using problem-solving processes between agencies. Then we have Channel, which is our support mechanism and is a multi-agency approach led by the council. And this looks at referrals of people who are at risk of being drawn into terrorism and decides whether or not action needs to be taken. So Channel works alongside safeguarding partners to protect people at risk from radicalisation and looks at people's vulnerabilities early and reduces the risk of harm. So where people holding extremist views might appear to be moving towards terrorism, they become more relevant to Channel partners. They're likely to have been identified as holding extreme yet legitimate ideas, but have been assessed as being at the risk of moving from that position into one of criminality. A big theme we've talked about tonight is consent, and Channel does require consent as a support mechanism as well. It's really important to try and get that consent and achieve that consent, because we know support and intervention is more effective with consent. So next slide, please, Detty. So the local context around the East Riding. So the East Riding is a non-funded local authority, which means it gets no additional funding from the government to deliver Prevent. The responsibility of Prevent is in non-funded authorities is often an additional responsibility added to a pre-existing role. This evidences why for a non-funded authority, good partnership working is essential to Prevent success. There are no funded Prevent local authorities in the Humber region. The East Riding is generally considered a safe place to be and is currently ranked 8 out of 10 of the 10 unfunded local authorities in the Yorkshire and Humber region for threat and risk. As we know, it is a very large area with no major cities apart from enclosing Hull, and is interspersed with towns and many small villages, often best represented by the community organisations who are present today. There are, however, areas in the East Riding with high levels of deprivation, and as with any area of safeguarding, this has the potential to lead to personal vulnerabilities being exploited. Part of how Prevent operates is to work to identify the vulnerabilities that may lead to radicalisation, even before the individual reaches that point, by effective early intervention. So as we know, how we engage with others online has rapidly changed in the last decade and become truly globalised. Online influences play a significant role in radicalisation, as information ideas can be accessed and shared freely, and vulnerabilities can therefore be exploited. This is given particular pertinence following the pandemic, where our lives have shifted to be more online. So given the rurality of the East Riding, we can see as organisations the effects of social and rural isolation on our residents. While the internet can offer a solution to isolation, for some it can also play a significant role in putting people at risk of radicalisation. Next slide, please, Leslie. So communication and community engagement. So as previously mentioned, in the East Riding, we have in place well-established referral, support, planning and governance mechanisms for preventing the risk of becoming radicalised. And this is facilitated through good partnership working. A challenge we can tend to find due to lack of resource, be it financial, time, in kind, etc., can be getting the required engagement with the variety of communities in the East Riding. And this is something we're currently working towards improving on. So we want to ensure the voluntary faith, social enterprise and community sector feels they have access to the information relating to Prevent at the right level for them. We do not doubt that partners here today are receptive to any Prevent-related communications and will be keen to engage. So as previously mentioned, we are currently drafting an updated communications and engagement strategy. And one of the aims is to engage with residents, businesses, the voluntary sector, community groups and faith groups to support people to feel confident in safeguarding the vulnerable, identifying what behaviours to look out for, and to feel confident about raising concerns. Part of this strategy will consider how Prevent information is accessed both in physical and online spaces. We're hoping from September to work with our partners in Irvas to start to deliver Prevent community engagement events, initially virtual, with the hope that these can eventually become place-based in localities. On this slide as well, I've also included some other things we're trying to work towards, which would include newsletters, and we know this is going on the the voluntary sector organisation platform as well today. So all of this builds into that bigger picture. So next slide, please, Detty. So I've popped some links and resources onto this slide, which should be available for everyone afterwards. And just before we move on to questions, I wanted to look at two of the main free e-learning offers. First is the Home Office e-learning training on Prevent, and it offers a good introduction to Prevent duty, explains how it aims to safeguard vulnerable people from being radicalised to supporting terrorism or becoming terrorists themselves. It's very introductory training, but will provide an important foundation on which to develop further knowledge around the risks of radicalisation and the role that you can play in supporting those at risk. The training addresses all forms of terrorism and non-violent extremism, including far right-wing and Islamist extremism threatening the UK. Secondly is the ACT e-learning. So the ACT awareness e-learning will provide is nationally recognised corporate CT guidance. So it helps people and organisations with physical buildings as well better understand and mitigate against current terrorist methodology. So it includes modules around identifying security vulnerabilities, how to identify and respond to suspicious behaviour, particularly pertinent if, as I mentioned, if your organisation oversees a physical building. Of course, we'd also include anyone wanting any additional information, advice and guidance regarding Prevent to email us at prevent@eastriding.gov.uk and we'll happily help and respond to any queries you might have. So last slide, please, Stetty. So yeah, it's just for questions really, and I thought that given that I talked a bit about communities and engagement today, it might be that some of the questions you might want to ask is or prompts for questions is what do you feel you need as organisations? What would you like to see more of? What do you think you can do to support preventing the East Riding? And do you have anything in place currently? That'd be interesting to know. So yeah, thank you very much. I'll hand it back over to you, Desi.
That's brilliant. Oh, Matthew, thank you so much for that. I think that's really, really comprehensive because, I mean, you've not actually been in post that long. There's a lot of information there that you've provided, lots of really, you know, great ideas for how we can move forward with voluntary and community sector. And I think those questions are really, really good because I think it's really important that we use the opportunity tonight to find out a little bit more from those groups who are here today, you know, about what they'd like to see more of, what do they need, what can they do to support Prevent, and what have they already got in place. So what I'd like to suggest is just spending maybe a couple of minutes, everybody having a little think about those questions that Matthew's put as prompts and just putting some things in the chat. You know, what do you think? Let's start with first. What do you think that you or other organisations and community groups that you know of that you might work with, what do you think that they would need in order for them to know a little bit more about Prevent and be able to recognise, you know, any indicators with beneficiaries they're working with? What would help them? What do you think? So let's just say a minute. Let's just answer that one first. I think it's really important we get some information for this because it will really help us develop some training. So if we could all maybe put some things in the chat, what would you like? What do you need as organisations to know a bit more about Prevent? I'm going to put something in the chat because I think training, bespoke, training for different types of organisations. I mean, you're very welcome if you want to just put your hand up and just say. I could always make some notes.
And if people feel like they might have a question upon reflection at a later point, they can email it in as well, and we can happily try and answer or put it into a consultation document. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, have you put your email in the chat, Matthew, so people have got your contact directly?
I can do.
That would be good. So I think, you know, let's have a look at what would you like to see more of, what kind of things would help you. Has anybody got any? Yes, we've got something. Oh, that's you with your, that's great. That's Matthew's email. So you can email him directly. You can also contact us at Irvas because we are going to be working with Matthew to look at how we can, you know, raise awareness of Prevent across East Riding and how to recognise it, how to, you know, where to report it, how to get more training, how to develop training.
Just on training, Detis, there's probably a bit of a difference between community engagement workshops and training.
Yes.
So previously there was what was called Prevent Wrap training, which was delivered, I believe quite widely across the patch. obviously the pandemic had an impact on a lot of stuff. So face-to-face training, obviously over that period, had stopped. I'm aware now the Home Office are reviewing the training. So they've started with their online e-learning that's going through a review process at the minute. An update we've had is looking at face-to-face prevent wrap delivery coming out earlier next year. So it might be that actually training becomes more readily available face-to-face, because we want to be doing as an area what we're meant to be doing, I guess. And we can put a localized layer over the top of it, but you want to be using the core foundations of raising awareness of prevent. So we want to have that properly planned rather than just jump out. So there's a bit of a difference between community engagement events, and we have some guidance for that to guide us, but that is more around discussion. It's an extension of these.
Yeah, and I think we've had a good question from Steve at Smile Foundation, that there is a lot of anger and distrust of prevent across the country. How can you help the voluntary sector to promote prevent but not face negative actions from dissenters of prevent? So I kind of guess that means it's trying to get the balance right. And correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. So you're raising awareness of it. I think when you talk about having that local understanding of what's happening in East Riding, that will be helpful, because what happens in East Riding may be very different to what happens in different areas of the country, and making it proportionate. And so over to you, Matthew. How can we?
I think that you may raise a good point about the local context. It's understanding your communities. So part of being here tonight or doing this community work is really understanding communities and community tensions. What is a big thing at the minute is prevent is under a lot of scrutiny. It's under this longer term review. Until we see that review published, obviously we can't comment on that, but it's prevent, I think, is shrouding in a certain element as well of actually it fits under those 4 Ps. So prevent is one part of it, it's the early intervention part of it, but there's other facets of the strategy. And I think that it's about being careful with that. It's about if anything is going to be targeted, it's very carefully intelligence led. But what I'm trying to do with prevent in these regards is to have it at a level where, like the adult board did today, like the children's board did, is actually safeguarding, it's early intervention, it's support, and it's looking at the vulnerabilities to radicalisation. So actually, it's how you as community, voluntary sector organisations counter that. Actually, prevent is this. Well, actually, what we're trying to do is the same approach we're taking with any form of exploitation. We're trying to find what's wrong with the issue there. We're trying to support with that. And that's what we hope to achieve in the East Riding, is supportive, effective early intervention. But Steve, you do raise a good point. There is distrust and there's work to do. And if we can work together around engaging with communities, that's how we overcome that distrust. I hope that answers your question, because it's quite a big one.
Yeah, it is. There was a bit of a reason I asked it, Matthew. I used to be involved in prevent in a former life when I was a prison governor. So I've got first-hand experience of that dissent around prevent and how community leaders try in certain areas to influence the youth in their community, that prevent is a tool being used by a white government as a racist tool against non-white areas of communities. And as the East Riding is now starting to diversify more from being a predominantly white culture, I do think those are issues that we will face as we move forward in time. And it's just making sure that as the voluntary sector starts to support the introduction of prevent and promote it, that we make those voluntary sector organisations fully supported and aware that there will be instances of negativity around prevent promotion as we go forward, but that there needs to be a safety net for those organisations to fall back on, or I think we will lose them quite quickly in that promotion.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's great, Steve. I've got a couple of other things in the chat. So we've had Amy from Bernardo's, some resources and information to be shared with children with special educational needs or disabilities. I think that would be, and also young adults as well, I think, and adults in general. I think that would be great. So I know we've had some discussions around that, Matthew, if you want to respond to Amy.
Yeah, thanks for that, Amy. So part of our communications engagement plan, and some of the stuff I've discussed with our regional prevent coordinator, because he's done a piece of work with children who are home educated or children not currently in provision. So we're looking as part of our communications engagement plan to pull together those resources and working with our partners in the safeguarding education teams as well, how we can get specific resources and information out. I attended some training last week that was specifically around the link between ASD autism and this area of work, and I think there is a demand for that, but there's also ensuring that these resources and information are getting out to a wide variety of educational settings and places, and not just mainstream. So thanks, Amy. It's definitely been considered as part of it. But it's how, when I mentioned the Prevent Board earlier, it's because we're a non-funded authority, our resource is very small. So it's how we can work as partners to distribute and send out that information and have people feeling confident to use it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Brilliant. And we've also had a comment in the chat from Debbie Wells, which I'll leave you to read if that's all right, Matthew, because some really good sort of suggestions about how to link in with the Safeguarding Hub about request service and prevent and indicators. So you can possibly look at responding to Debbie. I'm just a bit conscious of time, if that's okay, but if there are any more thoughts about what you'd find useful, what you may feel you already do, things around prevent, or anything else to do with the Community Safety Partnership, then please pop it in the chat or email Matthew. That'd be lovely. So I'm going to move on to the last slides, which are from me. So my dog's just decided to wake up now as well, so this will be all fun. So I'm Betty Tyler. I work for East Riding Voluntary Action Services, and we are now delivering from the 1st of April. We're delivering the voluntary and community sector safeguarding support service. So that's around anybody in the voluntary, community, social enterprise and faith sector that work with children, young people, families and adults. So we're able to provide a range of support and hopefully sessions like this. So we also, along with that, have undertaken the East Riding Domestic Abuse Lead Representative role for the voluntary and community sector. And as I said earlier, I'm very pleased that I have 2 new colleagues that will be starting with us on the 6th of July on the course. That is Gemma and Tricia. So thank you very much, guys, for coming along today. So they'll be delivering all the aspects around how we can support the voluntary and community sector to get a wider understanding of how they can keep their beneficiaries safe within their settings, whether it's children, young people or adults, and also gain more understanding around domestic abuse, what's happening in East Riding and how we can support survivors, victims, families, and also to work with perpetrators to make sure that we're providing a good offer within the voluntary and community sector as well as with statutory organisations. So that's really about how we can make sure that all voluntary and community sector groups in East Riding understand operationally how they can keep people within their settings safe. But so that includes things like policies. We have a wide range of policy templates. We can help you to gain insurance. We provide a DBS check-in service and have done for a number of years. We use UCheck. We have a section of the URVAS website, which I will put the link in the chat, and I'll hopefully have time to just quickly show you it as well. It's on the URVAS, we call it Keeping People Safe. We have a fortnightly bulletin that now goes out on a Wednesday, and in our e-bulletin we have a section in there called Keeping People Safe. So we provide lots of information from different partners, including the Safeguarding Children Partnership and the Safeguarding Adults Board, both of whom fund this service, and we can help support if you've got any concerns, you're not quite sure where to go, or you're having any issues, and you might want a bit of support to make any referrals or raise concerns or look at, you know, so although you've had a lot of information tonight on where to go, you may still feel a bit unsure, so we can help you with that and signpost you in the right direction. What I would say for any organisations here tonight that aren't from East Riding, if you're not sure who can support you as a voluntary community group specifically, I would contact your safeguarding boards and find out if there's anybody in your area that provides specific support to voluntary and community groups or faith sector groups. On our website, we have a wide range of different web links to various boards in our neighbouring authorities, as well as kind of sector specific, like such as faith sector groups, etc. as well. We also link in very much with national partners like the NSPCC and the NCVO and NAVCA, which are national infrastructure organisations for voluntary and community groups. We're very keen to connect people together in East Riding. We're a very large rural authority. It's very important that you know who is doing what, which is why it's great to have had all the presenters here tonight. So it gives you a really good idea of you know, who will be there at the end of the phone, or taking referrals, or helping you to manage allegations, or who is there who you know, can give you more information about the wider community safety and work that's going on, including kind of more different safeguarding topics such as prevent. But I also want to look at other areas such as things like modern day slavery, exploitation. There's a wide range of safeguarding topics which are not just about operational support, if you like. So that is why we're very, very keen to develop different areas of training, which I'll be doing with my 2 new colleagues. We will provide this online, we will provide it face to face, we will do it bespoke for individual organisations, where you may want a couple of hours just to look at your own organisation and how, you know, what safeguarding needs there are, and how, you know, what you need to do to make sure you're keeping your beneficiaries safe. We also obviously very keen to signpost to existing training, such as that is provided by the Safeguarding Children's Partnership. Very, very comprehensive list of training there for all sectors, and a majority of it I think is free. Margaret, correct me if I'm wrong. And the same for Safeguarding Adults. There's a lot of training that's on offer, so familiarise yourself with that, see if there's anything that would be good for you and colleagues. But again, like I say, we'll be developing a lot of additional training. And I think, as Matthew said, it isn't just about training, it's about community engagement. So we also have things such as the Voluntary and Community Safeguarding Forum. And this really forms that tonight, because at the last Safeguarding Forum, people were very, very keen to look at all the things we've talked about tonight. So we thought we'll do that in National Safeguarding Week and put it on more as a seminar really with speakers. But we have also, in line with the new domestic abuse work that we're doing, we have organised an East Riding Voluntary and Community Sector Domestic Abuse Forum, which is on the 12th of July, 1:30 till 3:30. It's via Zoom, and I can put the link in the chat. There is going to be a presentation from a national organisation called PEGS, which is around child on parent abuse. And that's not necessarily just children under the age of 18, it's more about the relationship between children and parents. So I have Michelle John coming to talk about that, and it's the first meeting, so it's very much about what do you want to know, what is the that can support people, that covers East Riding, what else could we do, what kind of information would you like to know more about, what kind of training would work for you. So yeah, if you're interested in that, please come along. I'll put the invite in the chat. We will be doing a number of different events and conferences for voluntary and community groups in the future. So if you're not already signed up to our e-bulletin, please sign up. It's usually on the bottom of any of our emails, and again I can put the link in the chat, and then you'll get information regularly from us. So yeah, so it's about how we work together with local voluntary community groups, making sure they're fit for purpose, making sure they're safe places to be, providing as much support as we possibly can, because it is, you know, we do understand and appreciate, you know, that, you know, putting a policy together, you know, is not the easiest thing. So that's why we have our range of templates. And you know, things like DBS checks aren't always easy to get hold of, so we've been doing that for a number of years as well. It's about how we grow new groups as well, and new organisations within our sector. So, you know, anybody who would like to kind of maybe consider setting up a group to meet a need that might keep people safer, you know, we can help with all of that. And we work with our colleagues at SMAR Foundation, who also, that is part of their remit, to support voluntary and community groups. So it's making sure that, you know, together we're working to make sure we can grow our our resources, our groups, our services and support for our, for our residents really within East Riding, to make sure that, they get as much help as they need to keep safe. We do a lot of work with young people as well around youth voice, and that's very important to make sure that we're listening to young people about how to keep them safe. So if you do work with young people, please get in touch with me if you'd like us to do a bit of work like that with your young people from your group. And I think in the world of adults groups, we're also very keen. I think we've had discussions before with Marie about how we can engage more with service users to find out, what would help them. So in terms of voluntary community groups and their beneficiaries, we're always really keen to look at what helps them to keep safe, and trying to develop services and resources to support them. So we have a wide range of things at URVAS that we can provide support with: setting up groups, governance, consultation, funding support, volunteers. We can promote volunteer opportunities. We've got accountancy services. We can help you to market and promote things. So if, as I said, we have got an e-bulletin, we have a section in it, keeping people safe, which we're more than happy to share anything that you've got coming up in that section if you think it's relevant, or if you've got anything else, we can share it in our e-bulletin. And it's about how we work together. So I think what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to stop sharing this slide. I mean, there is just this one. So you can contact me, detty@urvas.org.uk. You can telephone 01482 871077, and shortly we will have a couple of colleagues with additional emails. But we have got a website, which I'm going to pop it in the chat. In fact, I'll put all of that in the chat. And then I'm going to try and just share the website link with you, because I think you'll find a lot of information on there. Some of the things that the presenters have already mentioned, such as the keeping adults safe and the 10 areas that Marie referred to. So I'll stop sharing this. Oh, look, it's lovely to see you all. I've been staring at the PowerPoint, so it's great to see everybody here. I'm going to try and share the keeping people safe screen. So just bear with me while I do that. And if you've got any questions and things, just give me an email after tonight if there's anything you really want to know a bit more about. So this is, you go on the urvas.org.uk, which is our general part of the website. And then there's a section where you can go on keeping people safe. And then that's our front page. The recording of tonight's session will be on here, as we are recording all our safeguarding forums, as we will with our domestic abuse forum as well, so that people who are unable to make a meeting can see it and catch up with it, or they can share it with colleagues. Yes, Steve's put some comments as well, so please have a look at that. That's the support that Smile offer, which is great. So on the keeping people safe, we've got information on there about UCheck, who we use to do DBS, but you can just get in touch with us and we'll organise that for you, because you have to use us to go through UCheck. We've got information about insurers, because obviously everybody has to have insurance really if they're running in activities, and the insurers we use do very good rates for voluntary and community groups. We have a range of practical activities there, so we've got access to a range of policies and procedures, which are templates, but we also have some webinars which explain in a bit more detail about what your policies are. We have, I think my internet might have gone off a bit, yeah. We have our safeguarding training offer, which links in very much with partners. We have our e-bulletin, which there's the link there. And then you can go into specific areas such as finding out more about keeping adults safe, which is very much the kind of things Marie was talking about. Then there's a section on keeping children safe. So again, there's more information on there about what Margaret, Joe, and everybody else was referring to. And then we've got some information about Fraud Watch, which Marie spoke about as well in terms of financial abuse, because it is very prominent now, and URVAS has some funding through the Police and Crime Commission to deliver a number of different training packages around scams and fraud. So I think that would be worth having a look at, particularly for working with adults. Then we have underneath safeguarding forum meetings. It's every 2 or 3 months. They are recorded and there are minutes. So if you want to have a look at those, please do. And I think I'm going to stop there because I'm so pleased that most people have remained on the call. I think, you know, the people who have gone have been mainly the presenters who have finished. So, you know, so that's really the end of tonight's session. And if you like, a number of you have put in your emails in the chat, I will send you a copy of the slides tomorrow. You can watch the recording probably later next week by the time it's on. And I would just like to thank you very, very much for staying on the call, for all your questions, all your thoughts. I'd really like to say a huge thank you to all the presenters because, you know, you've done a tremendous job. There's a lot of information and I hope that everybody has found it useful. So is there any further questions about anything that I've said or that anybody else has talked about? No? Stunned silence, that's great. Okay, well, if you do have any questions that you think about afterwards, just drop me a line. I can always forward it on to somebody else if you can't remember. And you're all very, very welcome. It's and you know, it's been lovely to see you all. And thank you very much for being part of our Safeguarding Week in terms of keeping people safe in the voluntary and community sector. Thank you very, very much. Bye bye now. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Lucy. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye
Been
bye.
wonderful. Bye. Good
Bye,
night,
everybody.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Detty.
Bye bye. You're very welcome.